Hello, hi guys, how are you? How's everybody today? So I'm just popping on live. I'm just making sure it's working with my setup here. Make sure that everything is good. But how are you? I have received absolutely dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of questions on this topic, which was quite eye-opening for me. I've got all the questions that written down. So many questions, I printed them all off today. So many questions that I'm going to be doing this in a couple of different parts because there are some really interesting questions, and I see lots of you are taking progesterone raising hormones, bioidentical cream, synthetic, and maybe even looking into it, maybe even having some tests done to see if it's something that you need. So it's obviously a subject close to your hearts and one that you want to know a little bit more about. So today what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through some of the options that you have, what my thoughts are on those, and actually what those options are doing in your body. And then in part two, what I'm going to go and do is go through some of the questions and then talk about the scenarios, the best scenarios, the best outcome for the scenarios that different women are in. I've had lots of questions from women that are postmenopausal. I've had lots of questions from women that have recurrent miscarriages, unable to get pregnant. So for everyone, it might be a little bit different, and it really depends on what's going on. But first, to know that what we're going to go through today, I'm going to talk about Vitex, which is a herb called chase tree, which is used by naturopaths and herbalists to support progesterone levels. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more and exactly what it does and what I've seen in clinical practice. I'm going to talk about bioidentical natural cream, which is a plant source. I'm actually going to be talking about pometrium, which is a bioidentical tablet, which is also a plant source, but it's more, it's produced actually by, in labs. So it's actually will be referred to you by your GP. You can't just source it. And then I'm also going to be talking about bioidentical forms from animal source slightly, and then also your kind of bog standard HRT, which is your Provera, which is it's synthetic progestin. So I'm going to be talking about those a little bit more. So when it comes to progesterone is produced in your ovaries, and it's also produced in your adrenal glands as well. And we know that the cycle of progesterone decreases when you have your menstrual cycle, and then when you ovulate, your luteinizing hormone, which spurs on the egg to rupture and cause ovulation, then produces the corpus luteum. And it's the corpus luteum that goes on to produce the progesterone, and we know at about 8 weeks that progesterone is very, very high, and that's what supports a healthy pregnancy, and that's what prevents miscarriage, and that's what can cause some of those early symptoms when you're pregnant in terms of morning sickness and fatigue and those kind of symptoms. So that's generally what happens to the progesterone levels. Now, progesterone itself is a hormone that's good for both men and it's good for women. It's not just a sex hormone. It's a calming hormone. It can prevent cancer. It can regulate your immune system. It's anti-estrogen. It can prevent the proliferative effects of estrogen in the uterus. It can support breast tissue by preventing breast cancer. It can support fluid balance in your body. It helps with sleep. It helps with relaxing. It can support your gallbladder as well. It's good for your libido, and it's also been shown to be anti-insulin, which means it can counteract the effects of insulin if insulin's spiking and you may be pre-diabetic or you've got some blood sugar issues going on. I know myself what it feels like to have low progesterone, and for me, years ago, I went on Vitex, and I remember at the time, low progesterone for me was that very long cycle. So generally, you have a 28-day cycle. Day 14, you ovulate. Corpus luteum produces a progesterone and estrogen then fall at around your 26 to 28 day mark, and you have your period. But I remember for me, and I was coming off the back of actually having the Implanon rod, which is a synthetic progesterone, which can give you that post-pill syndrome. And that what the synthetic progesterones do is they actually inhibit your body's own production of progesterone. So I was off the back of coming off the Implamon rod, and what occurred to me is I was having menstrual cycles that were 40, 50, 60 days long, so not that 28-day long. And I actually went on the Vitex, and it was quite interesting. That Vitex back then, that supported my period, and it sorted it out. I think for me, it took 8 weeks. So for me, it was quite quick acting. I just had to take it for a short period of time, and it worked really nicely, really nicely. But the thing about Vitex is it's not always needed, and it's not always the right thing to do. So Vitex, which is chaste tree, what Vitex has been shown to do is Vitex will actually regulate your luteinizing hormone, and it will also regulate your follicle stimulating hormone. And by doing that, then it also regulates your prolactin. It's also been shown to reduce prolactin. So if you're a man, if you're a gentleman with man boobs, or you're a woman with high prolactin, or breast tissue problems or breast cyst problems, then the Vitex has been shown to bring that prolactin down. But what Vitex is specific for, and what it has been shown to be really good for, is that those mood issues in the second half of your cycle, PMT, PMDD, depression, very low moods, extreme anxiety, it's fogginess, those kind of conditions. Because what Vitex has been shown to do, which is very interesting, it works on your dopamine receptors, and as well as initiating luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, which go on then to support your body to produce estrogen and also progesterone. Vitex has been shown to produce dopamine. So it's very good for women that are extremely lethargic, extremely depressed, have a really bad time of it that week leading up to their period, maybe very apathetic, maybe even suicidal for some women, but there's that going on. So it's very good in that situation, and it can help with that. Now, some women find it actually helps more with the moods than it does with their menstrual cycle. So that just goes to show how powerful it can be on the moods and also the neurotransmitters. I've got a list here of low dopamine symptoms, actually, for anyone that wanted to know. So low dopamine symptoms, we know that there's a connection between prolactin and low dopamine. Copious amounts of breast milk, lack of motivation, inability to experience pleasure, insomnia, very hard time getting up in the morning, mood swings, forgetfulness, memory loss, low libido is a biggie, sugar cravings, caffeine cravings, inability to handle stress, and weight gain. But on the flip side, this means that Vitex is not good for anybody that is very sensitive to dopamine, and maybe got some dopamine related addictions to intense sport, to porn, to sex, high dopamine symptoms. So if you've got too much dopamine, Vitex or chaste tree is not for you. If you're on L-Dopa, or you're on any antipsychotic medication, then chaste tree or Vitex can cause some kind of worsen of symptoms. So you need to be careful there. Vitex, chaste tree, high dopamine, burning tongue, aggression, hyperactivity, mania, vomiting. Hiccups is a biggie as well with high dopamine, paranoia, and muscle twitching. So you do need to be careful. Even though Vitex is a herb, even though it's natural, it's not for everybody. And there's another group of people that maybe you need to use in caution. So what Vitex does is it regulates your luteinizing hormone. And so that week 1, week 2, you've got your luteinizing hormone, and that stimulates the ovarian follicles, and it is that stimulation that produces your progesterone and your estradiol. So if you've got a woman that's extremely hormone dominant, very, very estradiol dominant, not estrone or estriol, but estradiol dominant, then there is a chance that Vitex can sort of stimulate that as well. So that's one thing just to look out for if you know you've got a lot of estradiol. If you're on the pill as well, Vitex might not be for you as well. So that's Vitex, that's chaste tree, and that's one of the best natural herbs out there for stimulating ovulation, It has actually been used as well to prevent miscarriage, and I've had a client that used it to prevent miscarriage, and it worked for her. I found it's very good for bringing the cycle to 28 days. So bringing the cycle either from a long cycle to a short cycle, bringing it to 28 days. It's very good for very heavy, painful periods. It's good for depression in the luteal phase, I've found. This is in clinical practice. And it's good for kind of anxiety and insomnia. But you don't want to be taking it too long term. 3 to 6 months is ideal. If you need to be taking it longer than that, then maybe you need to be taking something else or looking at something else. So that's looking at Chase Tree. That's looking at Vitex and how that works. And that's kind of that preferred one to go to. So if you're in your menstrual cycle years, you haven't gone through menopause and you're in your menstrual cycle years, and you've got a super long menstrual cycle, or you're coming off the back of being on the oral contraceptive pill and you've got post-pill syndrome, or you haven't had a period for a long time, or your menstrual cycle is 25 days and you're very heavy, or you're not ovulating, then Vitex or Chase Tree might be a good one for you to try. So we're looking at kind of the ages, mid-20s, up to about 35, 36, 37, 38. It can work very well for those conditions. After that, you may need to be looking at something else, especially when you're perimenopausal. And then when you're menopausal, you may want to look at a different type of progesterone enhancing supplement. Natural progesterone creams. Now here in Australia, really the only cream that you can get in a shop is Anna's wild yam cream. Wild yam, like the root vegetable. Natural progesterone creams overseas are not as regulated. You can buy them from health food stores. You can get them online at iHerb, so they are widely available, but you need to exercise caution because these are hormones that we're talking about. Now, natural progesterone creams, the ones that work really well, they're micronized. So what that means is they've either come from wild yam or they've come from soy. They've been processed so much, the ingredients in them, the chemicals in them have been processed, they're easily absorbable through the skin. Now, in terms of clinical trials, there aren't tons and tons of clinical, placebo, double-blind trials done to show the efficacy. There are some, however, that show the ability to be anti-estrogenic, anti-cancer, and to support your body. And there's lots and lots of anecdotal evidence to support these creams. So really good quality, micronized, USP progesterone cream. So that's what you're looking for, the least amount of chemicals. It shouldn't matter if it comes from wild yam or soy because it should have been processed. And in the micronization, it's not really, if you're sensitive to that soy, it's not really soy anymore. It's that kind of chemical from the plant, so it shouldn't matter. Now, there is little evidence that the body can convert these. However, there are some studies that show that the level of progesterone before and after, and also women that take these creams, they show results quite instantly. And I know that I have taken a progesterone cream. I've taken the one overseas, Dr. Platt's progesterone cream, just on and off occasionally, and I notice a difference when I take it, in terms of just mentally, but in terms of reducing heaviness of periods and any clotting. I have taken that before. Now, you need to be careful with anything that's hormonal because progesterone will build up in the body, and there are some people out there who do mention and do talk about it not being dangerous to overdose on it. But what I found in clinical practice is there's a small percentage of women, normally women with Hashimoto's, of an autoimmune condition. This is about 3% of my clients that have very, very high progesterone levels. So if you have very high progesterone levels already, and then you go and counteract that by taking the cream, it's just going to build up in your body and it's going to be causing more negative symptoms. But out of all the creams and out of all the HRT and BHRT, which is your bioidentical hormone therapy, personally and experientially, the USP natural bioidentical creams are some of the safest. The reason being is they don't necessarily go straight through your digestive tract, they don't go straight through your liver, and they don't affect the gallbladder. Now, anything we take by mouth, the metabolites will go straight into the liver, hormones have to be processed through the liver by sulfation and glucuronidation, and the metabolites and then go into the gallbladder. So if you've got any gallbladder issues already and you start taking tablets, then that's going to compound any issues that are going on in your gallbladder. So you do need to be careful. So the USP micronized bioidentical creams, there are lots around, so you always need to be so careful. You need to read the ingredients, you need to see the milligrams of the progesterone, you always need to go low in milligrams, and you need to know what your hormones are doing. You need to have tested your hormones and know that your progesterone is low, and know that you're not too estrogen dominant as well, because you need to be working on the root cause of why your progesterone is low in the first place. Is it stress? Is it high blood sugar? Is it that you're just not ovulating? So maybe you need to try something like Vitex to start you ovulating. Is it a dopamine issue? So Vitex might be better. Is it that your ovaries have stopped working? So now your body's relying on the adrenals to produce progesterone. So in that case, maybe you do need a little bit of cream. But ideally, you don't want to be taking it every day. You would start off by taking a smaller dose, and you know, maybe 30 milligrams, 50 milligrams once a day. And then you want to drop it down to just taking it around your luteal phase. Ideally, you don't want to be taking it every day forever. As I mentioned, it does build up in the fatty tissue. And so long-term use every day in some women might result in nausea, might result in some constipation. We do know progesterone does have like a relaxing effect on the digestive system. So there are things and there are side effects to having too much, and I believe that you can have too much, and you can have too much of a good thing. And so just because something is good, never overdose, and always give your body a break as well. Even though it's natural, it will still be having an effect. There are also tablets. These tablets are Prometrium. They are 200 milligrams of natural bioidentical progesterone sourced from soy. Now, from all the questions that I received and from literature that I've been looking at, a lot of women had said they got great benefits from this. But I just want to caveat that with that. When you're taking the BHRT, even though it's bioidentical, you're consuming it. 200 milligrams of progesterone is a lot of progesterone. You know, that's a high dose, and your body has to process that. That has to go through the liver. So there is some skepticism as to how much progesterone your body will actually be going, and will it be going to the target tissue, because once it goes into the digestion tract and get broken down, the metabolite then goes to the liver, then you've got the metabolites and it's excreted. It's thought that maybe only 5 or 10% get somewhere, so that's why it's sort of that high amount. But this is really putting pressure on your liver and your gallbladder. So if you do opt for this medicated bioidentical hormones, you need to, 1, make sure you've had your liver function done, 2, 100% make sure you've done the Dutch hormone test, and 3, make sure that you're being monitored regularly, because it's a high dose. Even though it's natural, it's a medication, and your body has to process it, and as it's processing it, it can lead to sludgy bile in the gallbladder. It could lead to other toxins and metabolites building up. So you need to be really careful. So Prometrium, even though it is bioidentical, even though it's natural, it's a high dose, and we should look at it as a medication, because there's going to be lots of other processes in the body that are having to compound that, and particularly the gallbladder. So one of the things I've noticed about a lot of the questions coming in was gallbladder issues. I had 3 women highlight from taking progesterone HRT, one was on BHRT and one was on a natural progesterone cream. They suspect gallbladder issues, and that's not impossible. So you need to know your gallbladder is working properly, and you always need to be supporting your liver whenever you're taking anything high dose that needs to be broken down. Any hormones need to be broken down, and they need to be broken down through your liver. Your gut, your liver, and your gallbladder also takes a lot of the brunt of it. We also know now that the gallbladder contains hormone receptors. It has estrogen and it has progesterone receptors in. What estrogen tends to do to the gallbladder is it causes gallbladder damage. So it can cause stones in the gallbladder. And what we know now is women that are on long-term estrogen therapy, long-term oral contraceptive pill, HRT, or they've got estrogen dominant conditions like endometriosis, do end up with gallbladder issues, and a lot of these women have to have their gallbladder removed. So even when you're on these progesterone supplements, you need to be supporting your body in removing these estrogens as well. So a high fiber diet, supplements like choline, apple cider vinegar, lemon in water, globe artichoke, St. Mary's this are bitter foods. You need to be looking after your liver and your gallbladder, because you need to be getting to the root cause, supporting your symptoms with the progesterone or supporting ovulation, but getting to the root cause of that excess estrogen is really important. So those are the natural ones. We've got the natural bioidentical cream. We've got the natural bioidentical tablets that some women get from their GP. We've got the Vitex and the Chase Tree. And then we've got HRT. So HRT is a synthetic progestin. BHRT is your bioidentical, HRT is your synthetic progestin. Even though women have had benefits from this, it is something that I wouldn't do myself, and I wouldn't advise it. Now, studies show that the only benefit from taking progestin HRT has been lowering in hot flushes. And we know hot flushes, there's two things that really exacerbate hot flushes. One is that elevated follicle stimulating hormone, which can be brought down by Vitex. That's why Vitex can be used in the early stages of menopause, because it can work at bringing that follicle stimulating hormone down. Two is stress. So working on your stress and your adrenals. So when you go through menopause and progesterone stops getting produced in the ovaries, it starts getting produced in the adrenals. So what that means is working on your adrenals and supporting your adrenals through withania, rhodiola, holy basil, magnesium, vitamin C are really important for you to make sure you regulate the adrenal output of progesterone so you can naturally produce it. When you were 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, before your reproductive years, you were able to produce progesterone just fine. When you were in the womb, there was plenty of progesterone to keep you calm and happy in the womb. And then after your fertile years, when you go through menopause, there's no reason to have these super negative symptoms. And one of the biggest reasons that it can be so tough for some women is the stress, is the fact that your adrenals have been pumping out adrenaline and cortisol, and they need to now regulate, and the load needs to be shared. So working your adrenals is very important, and you can use Chase Tree and Vitex perimenopause as you're coming into your menopausal years to try and regulate also the progesterone output. We know that things like Provera, which is your synthetic progestin, HRT, can cause blood clots, fluid retention, acne, rashes. It can even support some cancers, in some women depression, in some women weight gain. So some women find it works really well straight away, but it's the long-term use that can be dangerous. And what's also being identified is these synthetic progestins, they can sit on the receptor sites of your androgen receptors, they can sit on your corticoid receptors, your glucocorticoid receptors, so they can initiate a response there and block the other hormones, causing water retention, anxiety, fluid retention, all of those types of things. And here is the thing, some studies have shown that women on synthetic HRT progestins are 30 to 40% more likely to have gallbladder surgery. So that's something that I think is pretty big, because the gallbladder is very important. With the synthetic progestins, we know that they interfere with your own natural progesterone production, because they're going to inhibit the progesterone production in your adrenals. We also know that they will create toxic metabolites that your liver, your gut, and your gallbladder then have to deal with. And we also know that it interferes with your liver and your gallbladder function. So when we're going through all the options, we've got the Vitex, we've got the bioidentical cream, we've got the bioidentical tablets, and then we've got the HRT. The synthetic HRT should be on the bottom of your list, and it shouldn't be something that is done long term. If you have to go on it because your specialist wants you to go on it for a month for some kind of reason, then you weigh the pros and cons, the pros and cons of that. But in my experience, those cons do outweigh the pros, and anything that's going to put you at increased stroke risk, anything that's going to put you at more increased risk of breast cancer, dementia, then I would say it's the con is way outweighs the pros when it comes to HRT, which is your synthetic progestin. What else did I want to talk about? So those are really the main ways to support your progesterone, apart from supporting your adrenals, taking cofactors like vitamin C, taking cofactors like B6, supporting the production. But if you're in that age bracket of your mid-20s to your late 30s, you want to focus on that ovulation. You want to bring that ovulation on. If you're extremely high stressed, or you've got a lot of cortisol, a lot of adrenaline in your body, if you're extremely estrogen dominant, you might find that a natural bioidentical cream will suit you more than Chaste Tree or Vitex. And with Chaste Tree or Vitex, if you take it and you have negative symptoms, I had one client that took it, and 2 days into it, she just didn't feel right. She moved over onto she sourced herself a progesterone cream and found that worked better for her. I think the takeaways are, don't do these things for a long period of time. Try and give your body a break. So if you're going through menopause, you're postmenopausal, and you're taking a progesterone cream, you probably want to do 3 weeks on, 1 week off. And if you're sort of perimenopausal and you're wondering what to do, or you're wanting to regulate your cycle, then what you could do is you could do a month on, and then you would just take that cream during your luteal phase, and you would regulate your symptoms. You want your body to still have that natural cycle. So the natural cycle is, during your menstrual cycle, when you bleed, the hormones are at their lower. Just before ovulation, testosterone's rising. That's why you get that peak in libido. Then at ovulation, your luteinizing hormone, your estrogen kind of peak, and progesterone's then coming up. Then after mid-cycle, which is that kind of day 14, progesterone and estrogen are kind of rising. They're at their peak. Progesterone's at their peak, and then around day 26, they both drop. If they don't both drop, your period may not happen for a little bit longer. So what you want to do is you want to replicate that natural cycle. So if you're extremely progesterone or hormone deficient, so I've just had a client who's had her Dutch hormone test and all her hormones are very, very low, she would go on maybe a bioidentical cream, a lower dose, 30 milligrams a day, maybe some at night if it's affecting her sleep as well. And then after about a month, she would start replicating her natural cycle. You don't want to be taking it every single day. You do want to come off it. So Queenie has just mentioned that she can't apply progesterone cream even under 50 milligrams. So it'd be interesting to know why. But if you're putting progesterone cream in and you're getting symptoms, there's a couple of things that could be going on. One is that you're progesterone dominant anyway, so you're just exacerbating those symptoms. Secondly is you might be sensitive to metabolites. So if you're very sensitive to metabolites, which is the pregnenolone, the allopregnanolone, if you're sensitive to those metabolites and you're having this progesterone cream, this means more metabolites are in your body. Now, you know if you're sensitive to them because you might be one of these people that really do suffer through your luteal phase, but your progesterone levels are high. So if you ovulate normally, you have high progesterone levels, there's no issues with low progesterone, but you feel crazy during that luteal phase, then that's normally that you do have some issues with the metabolites and your body is reacting to those unstable waves of hormones. So that is what can be going on there. That's the main, but it'd be interesting to know. And in terms of, Queenie was just asking about enema for liver cleansing, coffee enemas. I don't use coffee enemas, but I do know some people that use them and they absolutely love them and they get a lot of good results out of them. Essentially what's happening, Queenie, is the coffee speeds up your liver metabolism. So that's really what's happening. So as the caffeine is washing through there and giving you that enema, the caffeine is being absorbed into those small blood vessels. It's going to the liver, and essentially it's detoxing the liver, and it speeds up phase 1 of liver detoxification. Okay, so that was it for today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do another part, and I'm going to answer all your questions because I did get so many different questions in relation to bioidentical hormones, HRT, chaste tree and Vitex, and the difference between cream and also taking tablets. So I hope that gave you a little bit of an overview today. I think takeaways are to always get tested, see what your hormones are doing. Be really careful if you've got any immune issues, autoimmune issues, Hashimoto's, because playing around with your hormones can impact your thyroid and any autoimmune conditions. Always test, try and do the Dutch hormone test. If it's too expensive for you, you've got the saliva testing as well to do. Bloods don't give you a good idea of what your hormones are doing in real time. They don't give you an idea of your metabolites, and knowing your metabolites is very important. If you get your bloods done and it shows that you're low in estradiol, yet you've got very, very high metabolites that could be causing or leading to breast cancer, that can be very dangerous. So if you're going to be taking any hormonal supplementation, particularly for a longer period of time, getting those tests every so often will give you an idea of what your body is doing. And ideally, before menopausal years, you just want to be using things short term to get your body to ovulate naturally so that your corpus luteum can produce that 20 milligrams of progesterone a day. If you're postmenopausal, you just want to be supporting your body while you work on the root cause, which is most likely adrenaline and cortisol. So even if you're taking these things, even if you're taking the bioidentical hormones or the chaste tree, you need to be working at the root cause so that you're not on these things long term, and that's how you can eventually reach your optimal health. So I hope you found that helpful. I will pop in and schedule the Q&A on this and go through all the questions you sent through. So thank you so much for all those questions, and have a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye guys. Bye.